I'm Don Boyd from Kantar. I'm here with, or I will be here with Andrew Stephen from Oxford Saïd Business School to lift the lid really on a really important topic, which is growth and breakthrough growth as we all navigate the choppy waters of inflation and those dynamics. So we're going to be talking about that DNA of value creation, or to put it differently, the critical factors that give your business an unfair commercial advantage, and who wouldn't want that? So it's an exciting question. It's an exciting question to address because over the past decade, there's been a great deal of focus and excellent work on growth and the importance of mental and physical availability, which in theory should be guiding us to a golden age of marketing effectiveness, a golden age of marketing impact. But there have been changes. There have been changes in terms of a step change in the digital experience economy. There have been changes in terms of the ecosystems and the business model that startups are following. There have been changes in the growth of sustainability and the importance of that. So all of these are really profound changes in the market, changes in the dynamics of markets. And the evidence around effectiveness is worrying, blankly. Our Brand Z data shows that UK brand power is in long-term decline. We're being outpaced on the global stage. Data from Kantar and others shows that Cannes Award winners have never been less effective and no longer have a stronger commercial multiplier ratio than they once did. And as Peter Field has documented too from the IPA Effectiveness Data Bank, there's been a long-term decline in the commercial power of award winners too. So whatever brands are doing, it's not enough, and it's time to give ourselves some tough love, in particular around the idea that, you know, I think George Box once says that all models are wrong, but some are useful. So maybe the model of mental and physical availability and the way that we're thinking about marketing growth is maybe just missing something. So we thought it was time to explore some of the fundamentals of growth by asking ourselves a different kind of question. What's different about the brands who have built great value, who have built breakthrough value? And what exactly do those brands do differently? And does that add something to our understanding of what other brands might also need to do differently? So, as you might expect, we've talked a bit about Brand Z this morning. We have lifted the lid on Brand Z. We've flexed it, we've stretched it, we've done all kinds of stuff with it. At the heart of this analysis is Brand Z. It is insanely empirically valid. So over 19,000 brands, 522 categories, 51 markets. So it's kind of quite useful. As Martin and Adele talked about this morning, there are 3 key ingredients to Brand Z. One is being meaningful, so relevantly meeting needs. One is being different, which is about standing out as unique and being seen to be leading the way, and one is around salience, which is about coming to mind easily when making a purchase decision. And as the graph shows, it's rather good if you are in the top third of being meaningfully different, because it drives your value growth far, far faster. So meaningfully different and salient brands have 5 times the commercial brand growth of brands who aren't. So this is just a framework for helping properly manage a business. So pretty simple stuff. Of course, that kind of value creation isn't a fluke. While there are uncontrolled factors that do significantly impact a brand, such as new competitor launches, macroeconomic trends, there might also, and these are, you know, there are ways that brands can still be masters of their own destiny. In particular, defining powerful marketing strategy, ensuring strong investment, like we talked about this morning, and maximizing your equity. And as this is that I'm going to be focusing on today, by really putting breakthrough brands under the microscope. So let's start by looking at what's different about breakthrough brands. So these are defined as newcomers to the Brand Z Top 100 and fastest risers as a percentage of value change versus previous years. So you might be wondering what brands might meet the kind of criteria that I've outlined. Ta-da! It's easy to think that those might just be tech brands, might just be new brands, might just be challenger brands, and it is certainly true, but it does include some of those. So we do have YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So these are breakthrough brands on a global level, from a global top 100. And it does also include newer brands like Tesla, like Airbnb, like Lululemon. But you know what? It does also include a hell of a lot of other brands that don't fit those molds, like Chipotle or Target or Uniqlo or Cartier or KFC or Apple or Aldi. Those aren't new brands. They're not small brands. They're not challenger brands. So I think the point is simply that any brand can be a breakthrough brand in terms of breakthrough brand value creation. It's not confined by category, it's not confined by youth, it's not confined by challenger or digital business model. Those can all help, sure, but any brand can be a breakthrough brand. So if you're thinking, I'm on an older brand, I'm in a really tired category, I can't do this, that is not true. Sorry. What about the UK? Well, the same sort of thing applies. So there are some fantastic younger challenger brands in the UK. Brewdog, Revolut, Octopus Energy, Fevertree, to name just a few from this year's analysis. But there's also plenty of bigger, older brands too, like Nationwide, like Barclays, Sky, Dyson, Gordon's, Yorkshire Tea, and others too. So what is it that's different about breakthrough brands? Put simply, they're more different from others. When we look at the delta between breakthrough brands versus all those in brand Z and the top 100, the creme de la creme, if you like, they over-index significantly on difference. However we slice the data and dice the data, basically they always over-index quite significantly. Or, to put it differently, it's their difference that's their rocket fuel for growth. It's their difference that's propelling them forward because they're seen as standing out as unique, they're seen as standing out as leading the way. So, breakthrough brands are wired for difference, but where does the difference come from? Well, I think we heard some of this stuff from this morning's session, and the idea of having real clarity and focus. But fundamentally, in terms of the data, and the data, from this brand Z data set, there are some really fundamental, foundational things that really distinguish breakthrough brands. They are seen ultimately to disrupt. They're seen to shake things up. They're seen to lead the way. And creativity does play a powerful role here, and that's not just about creative communications, it's about showing up in a creative way. But ultimately, I think what's interesting for me is that this is a mindset. This is a way of being that provides a platform for challenging the status quo and or for shaping the overall category. So it's not, they're not necessarily challenger brands, but they sure as hell have a challenging mindset, a mindset that is restless, a mindset that is inventive, a mindset that makes stuff happen, which is really exciting. And that mindset literally is commercial gold dust. When supported with marketing investment and strong, insightful execution, it drives brand value that's 2.5 times higher than brands that lack difference over a 3-year period. And that's why it's your rocket fuel. Conversely, the opposite is true. Brands with salient but no meaningful difference tend to get into trouble pretty quickly. So looking at brands like Thomas Cook in the UK, House of Fraser, and other ones like that, they had higher salience and they did meaningful difference and they got into trouble. I think there's an important implication here for marketeers, which is about capitalizing on meaningfully different innovation, experience, or CSR initiatives that differentiate a brand by creating that fame around them. Because even if the advantage only lasts for a little while, effective marketing can enable perceptions of that difference to last for decades. And it's interesting to see what Patagonia are doing at the moment around that in terms of their CSR, because that's a very symbolic moment. And while it's a PR headline now, ultimately it will be the fabric of their brand for decades, I suspect. But there's something else. The evidence shows a very strong relationship between difference and price margin. Brands that are seen as uniquely different are also worth paying more for. Adele showed this chart, but it's so good, we're going to show it again. The higher your perceived difference, the more likely you are to say it's worth paying more for. And that's critical commercially, because McKinsey find that if volume remains stable, a 1% increase in average price improves operating profits by 8%. And that is 3 times higher the equivalent increase generated by a 1% increase in volume. So this margin stuff is your commercial goal stuff. And as a result, brands with stronger difference have stronger price and inelasticity. In fact, our data shows they're able to charge 14% more. Hopefully you got that right on the quiz. I think about 80% of you did, so that's great. It's a huge commercial advantage in inflationary times, obviously. When customers are prepared to pay more for you from competitors, even when times are tough, the price margins flows strongly through to your bottom line, and that obviously offsets some of your increases in things like raw materials and staff costs, etc. as a business. So meaningful difference is your brand magic. And we can see the scale of that impact by comparing the impact on demand power versus price power. Difference contributes 20% to demand power over here. And look, it slides up to 49% over in terms of your price power. But that's 8 times more than salience, which only contributes 6%. Let's look at the data a different way. The story becomes a bit clearer. When you add meaningfulness to salience, that accounts for 80% of a brand's demand power. But meaningful difference accounts for 94% of the price power. Well done for getting that right in the quiz. That was very, very impressive. So what are we really saying here? Because we're trying to really focus in on some simple rules of thumb. What we're saying is your demand power comes from your meaningful difference, your price power comes from your demand power comes from your meaningful salience, your price power comes from your meaningful difference, and that creates a brand value chain. Woo. We're in a cinema, come on. So the value chain flows. It flows. A lot of marketing theory has focused on this bit over here, the demand power, hasn't it? Mental and physical availability. And that's great, that's not wrong, but it's only part of the equation. You need all the bits of a chain to be working. So a good example is Apple. Apple is #1 in our global brand Z this year, so it's a nice one to focus on. It's increased its value by 55% in 1 year. Blimey. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a pretty big business. So, question for you all. What by far is the biggest factor in Apple's mind-blowing growth? Ta-da, it is difference. Difference is Apple's growth engine. That step change in value has been driven by very strong difference. The index is 197, that's almost double the average of a global top 100, and the global top 100 are pretty damn good anyway. So it's really effective because 2 other factors are involved too. It's applied meaningfully, so that index is at 111, and it's pretty salient too. So overall, it's got a really strong brand equity footprint, but the rocket fuel is its difference, or its perceived difference. But of course, it's not just Apple. We saw earlier some of the new entrants to the Brand Z Top 100, Pets at Home, Revolut and Fevertree. So, question for you all, in every single case, what is the #1 factor driving their growth? You are on point. Okay, but what about some of the more mature performers in Brand Z? Well, it is a similar story. You'd expect over time the profiles of a brand to sort of become more balanced, because when you become better known, you get more investment and you're able to operate in more categories to meet more needs. But what's interesting is that even here, in our mature success stories from the UK, difference certainly has a really, really strong role to play and benches very strongly. So what we've seen so far is that difference is the biggest denominator of breakthrough brands, and then those are any brands, not just new or tech brands. And we've seen that difference, when applied meaningfully, helps a brand command a bigger price premium with 3 times the EBITDA impact on sales volume. So it's a story where difference is helping a brand grow fast, scale fast, and command a price premium. So pretty good. But that's not all. We've looked at breakthrough growth. Come on up, Andrew. We've looked at it from another angle, partnering with Oxford Saïd Business School as part of their Future of Marketing initiative to explore what the biggest factors of abnormal share price returns are. This is pretty pioneering research. It's using the most sophisticated AI modeling, fusing Brand Z with the strongest existing financial share price models in the world. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew Stephen, who is the Associate Dean of Research, L'Oreal Professor of Marketing and Director of the Oxford Future of Marketing initiative. I'm knackered. To tell us a little bit more about this very special work.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've got too many job titles is what I'm learning from that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done with Kantar over the last few years, actually looking at digging into the Brand Z data and looking at some different types of outcomes. And this one is going to be about sort of stock market performance, which is important to probably those finance directors and CFOs that you need to win arguments with in the budget cycle, if not others. So what we're looking at here is trying to understand which drivers, or sort of which of the, we've got meaningful, different, and salient. So we take those and actually go a layer down, or a couple of layers down in what Brandsy measures. Which of those drivers are actually driving what's really influencing changes in what finance people call abnormal stock market returns. And so simple, if that's not familiar to you, what we're basically looking at is outperforming the market. So if you think about share price or stock market returns, the abnormal bit, hopefully it's positive, is in some sense that delta between what you'd forecast would happen in terms of stock returns and then what actually does happen. And so the idea there is the financial markets and financial analysts have a lot of very sort of finance-related and market risk-related measures that go into developing very, very good prediction models to have a sense of a forecast of stock returns. And then what we're looking at is, well, when they get that wrong using finance variables, can we actually have brand measures that help account for some of that, again, hopeful, positive abnormality. And so that's what we've been doing with this work. And we looked at quite a portion of the Brandsy data over 13 years, the global data set with 872 brands in that data set. And here's the obligatory academic slide. Sorry, everybody, we're not going to be a quiz on this one. No iPads to give away, but this is the stuff that I was talking about in terms of the models the prediction models that finance analysts use to sort of think about sort of forecasting out stock returns or share price and market cap and things like that. And so it's sort of a anyone in finance sort of learns these things. This is what they use. The analysts use that. And so what we essentially did is took those and then looked at how much better could the predictions or the forecasts be once we added in some brand measures from the Brandsy data. And so this is essentially a machine learning approach to that, and very, very accurate modeling. But really interestingly, if you look on the left-hand side there, you sort of go from sort of the best, the sort of the dark black bar there, and sort of the best effort that you could get with just using market and finance measures to forecast the stock returns. And then you add in Brandsy, you add in the brand measures, and you really get even much more improvement there. So there's something going on there. So then we said, okay, cool, that's great. But if we then decompose that, what's really driving that delta? And it could be lots of different things, because we put in as much as we possibly could in terms of the various brand equity drivers that Kantar measures with Brandsy under meaningful, different, and salient. And so there's lots there. Salient is there, difference or different is there. You've got, we looked at this also in the context of corporate responsibility, sustainability, and social responsibility. And lots of different things. But we're going to focus on kind of those high-level, meaningful, different, salient aspects first. So when we looked at the results across all of these years around the world, and I should mention it, that the findings don't vary really much at all when we break it down by geographic region or market. Things change over time, but have gotten pretty stable in, let's say, the last 5-6 years, with the big change actually being over time that social and environmental responsibility has become more important. Otherwise, the kind of the perennial marketing variables or brand variables are pretty stable over the whole window of time. So we found 3 factors here that rise above the others as sort of drivers of positive abnormal stock market performance. We've got corporate responsibility as number 3, corporate success as number 2. What do you think number 1 might be? There we go. Again, no prizes, so it's okay. But yes, it's different or difference that is really interesting here. So, and when my team and I first looked at these results, it was funny because we didn't even think that was interesting. We were like, well, of course, from a strategic standpoint, you want to be differentiated. And we know, differentiation as a sort of a corporate strategy element is similar and very similar, closely related to being different from a brand strategy standpoint. Not quite the same, but very, very similar. And so we didn't actually get that excited about this until we sort of started to think more about how this compares to, I guess, what the textbooks tell us and what we think, particularly around salience, has been so important over time. But actually, difference is a massive, massive driver of this sort of financial market performance of brands. So to the extent that we think that brand equity is super, super important in terms of the long-run financial performance and stability and growth, actually, of a company, of a corporation, it turns out that that difference is really, really, really key as a strategic driver of that. And the best model that we had really showed that. The factors that are increasing in contribution actually over the last 5 or so years. Different, so it's always been there, but it's getting stronger, which I think is interesting. Meaningful, so if we combine those two, meaningfully different. And that comes back to what Dom was saying and what we've heard all morning actually around driving pricing power. So if we sort of think about what's probably driving up abnormal stock returns, it's going to be more on things that hit the bottom line. So pricing is going to be really, really important there because it's very margin related. And particularly, I think, in the current economic climate. So different, meaningful brands that you can trust, brands that are responsible in social and environmental terms, and potential. So I think, that's really interesting to us. Then if we look on the other side of the slide, what's declining in importance, not saying they're unimportant, but just not as important in, let's say, the last 5 years as they have been previously, is salience and then factors related to sort of communication. So to me, as sort of a final thing before I hand back to Dom, the way that we're interpreting this is saying that there are sort of important things that we need to focus on and refocus on with our brand strategy, and then how we bring that to life with various activations in the marketplace. And being different and meaningfully different, I would add those two together, is absolutely vital, not just for breaking through, as Dom's been talking about, in terms of growth, but actually in terms of affecting the actual market finance or financial performance of the companies that own these brands. So hopefully that's informative, and I'm going to turn it back to Dom, who's going to bring this to life with some case studies.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. A special clap as well. Excellent. So look, yes, what's for so what? We've explored value creation through 2 different windows: our analysis of the most successful growing brands from a brand equity point of view, and from a financial share price point of view. And they both reach the same conclusion. It's difference that makes the difference. It's difference when applied meaningfully that's your foundation for success. It's difference that drives your price premium, and it's difference that's increasing in importance as a factor driving your share price. So this is pretty punchy stuff, really. We also wanted to understand what is the DNA of that difference, if it's so darn important, right? So we conducted, or Graham conducted, some brand structures path analysis to identify the factors contributing most to the difference. So there were 28 factors considered. But I think it's really just trying to lift a lid on, because we do get some questions on this. And what we found is that having a distinctive look and feel, sure, it plays a role, and it counts for almost a third of difference. And this is things like logos, slogans, characters, colours, fonts, etc. There's lots of things that kind of contribute to having a distinctive look and feel. But arguably as important, if not more important, we found that the remaining 70%. The vast majority, is made up from other factors, and a lot of those are more intangible, things like having a unique positioning, having a product and service experience which feels unique, brand responsibility, advertising certainly contributes, product design also contributes, price itself also contributes. And ultimately what they're doing is creating meaningfully different brand associations in the mind of your audience and consumers, and it shows that difference is made from much more than just distinctiveness. So there's been lot of focus on distinctive assets, but that's definitely important. And I think there's definitely an argument to say more brands, as Russell pointed out this morning, more brands should be using more of their distinctive assets more often. But those are components which are often features, especially on packs and in advertising. And I think what this is showing is you need to go beyond the moment of purchase. Because together, what this is showing is it's the set of brand associations forge a simple shorthand, or heuristic in psychological terms. Difference, whether it's functionally driven or emotionally driven, is an implicit social signal of leadership and of quality. Difference is an implicit social signal of leadership and quality. And that signal is both based on private sensory experience of a product, and we heard this morning about how important brands like Fever-Tree, how obsessed they are with that product experience, but it's also your sense of what others think is important too. And that signal is what helps you command a price premium or protect the price that you've got from being undercut. And that's what really helps. How do you do it in practice? Well, consistency helps. The stronger your consistency, the stronger your difference. Breakthrough brands also, when we looked at them, they're much more likely to have a clarity at their heart, and that's how well, this is about how well the emotional territory is being defined. Brands with strong clarity come to mind more easily and more readily when a set of needs or usage occasions occurred. Why does that matter? Because it allows them to excel. Breakthrough brands are seen as stronger at innovation, stronger at experience, stronger at being seen as responsible, stronger at communicating creatively. Together, those brands come to mind more easily. They combine to create a connected imprint that shines across the customer journey and relationship, reinforcing in strength. So I sort of see this a little bit like compound interest. If you're really clear from a start, if you get your foundations right, your positioning right, then it's much if you execute it across different spaces, it's much more easy for your brands to shine. So when you put that into our model, it's a little bit like that. An important implication is we shouldn't confuse communications-led growth with brand-led growth. They are different. Instead, we need to embrace the role of non-communication roles, such as product and service innovation, responsibility and experience, also play in driving preference and margin through difference. So it's time to stop pretending the role of brand growth stops at purchase and at the moment of being available. The values brands create comes from what we're calling mental and physical connectivity, and that's really a way of recognizing the role each of those elements that we saw in that value chain plays in building a stronger, distinctive and differentiated connected experience before, during and after purchase. So let's pause to consider Apple. It's got a strong innovation focus, a simple product and visual architecture, and a clearly utility ecosystem. So the more you synchronize devices together, the better your utility experience. How has it grown? We saw it grew through difference, but ultimately it's focused on the fundamentals of how brands grow. It's obsessed with creating and being seen to create difference through strong innovation and supporting that through emotive comms. It's driven really strong penetration. This particular chart, I think, is via iPhone, but I think you can see that each of its new products have got penetration, and each of those products has driven price power and price inelasticity, and that allows for business to reinvest, including in marketing, of course. It's also worth pointing out it's seen to have really good advertising. It indexes 129, 29% above the average for has great ads. But what about other brands from other categories? Well, let's look at Tony Chocolonely. Its brand only came into existence in 2005. Its brand power has doubled for the past few years. The keys to growth, I think, are having a different purpose, where it indexes at for difference at 2 to 6. And the core to that is their commitment to 100% slavery-free chocolate. Now, interestingly, it's been formed by a journalist who investigated such practices before forming the company. So it's not really just window dressing. They've really doubled down on it. And they've launched really innovative new boundary-pushing new bars, which are titled Injustice, Inequality, and Inhuman, for example. Pretty punchy. But we also use their packaging as their advertising. They've got a really strong product aesthetic. As a result, they've got index for 126 of leading the way. interesting to see how they set out to be different in everything they do. And that's evident in their approach to creating fame. It takes a really progressive approach to the way it thinks about advertising by collaborating with influencers who've got strong reach and cultural capital, like pop icon Pharrell Williams of Get Lucky fame, for those in the back seats. He's got a non-profit organisation called Black Ambition Programme, which is about levelling the playing field for Black and Latino entrepreneurs. And each bar sold contributes to that programme and for benefits of that programme, such as capital investment and mentorship. So really interestingly different approach to everything it does. Aldi could be a very different kind of success story. It's a brand that came to the UK over 30 years ago. It's now the UK's 4th biggest supermarket. How? Once again, we see some really common factors. It's articulated a very strong distinct position in what was a crowded market and has amplified that by increasing its store footprint, but it's also invested really strongly in comms. We did a session with them in Cannes, and with Russell actually, and it was called Unlocking the Creative Code. We did it alongside Marmite. One of the findings from that is that consistency is their secret ingredient, if you like, and that you can sort of see how they've used Kevin the Carrot over the years. And guess what? That commitment to creative excellence has seen it really go from strength to strength. It was our star performer and overall winner in Kantar's Christmas Ad of the Year, which we should be doing again this year. Make no mistake, this was a masterclass in creative communications, demonstrating not only consistency, but also clarity, which brought its proposition to life, but it told in a really emotionally rich way. And it's that kind of creative excellence which has helped it get to IPA effectiveness and FE awards too. Here's a final example. We've got loads of this. I've got a whole bank of these if you really want to hear more, but we're not going to do that bank today because there's only so much time. But final example is Yorkshire Tea. It's increased its brand power by 21.4% over the last 2 years. At its heart is a position that's distinct, proper tea from a proper place, Yorkshire. It's got an incredible level of difference, 226. It uses comms and social innovation to make really powerfully. It's got a real lightness of touch, a real humour, a real candour to it. It shows a different take on life and a different take on tea. And that's translated to price power index of 105. Just chatting to Dom, who'll be on our panel in a minute, he sort of said, actually, the margin that we've got against PG and Tetley is basically off the scale. It's insane. And they've got a loyal army of advocates, including our own CEO, Amy, who brings it into the office. She likes it so much. So there you go. That's a real breakthrough kind of brand. And it's got an index of 144 for has great ads. So this isn't rocket science, really. How do you create difference? Well, get the foundations right, amplify really powerfully. What does that advertising look like? Well, let's have a look.
Morning, all. Morning. Brothers, sisters, today a great legacy rests upon your shoulders. Because here, we make more than just tea. We make proper brews. Brews that bring a tear to your eye and warmth to your soul. So go out there and do it for each other. Do it for yourselves, but most of all, do it for Yorkshire! Oh, and the fire drill's Thursday at 3.
Yorkshire Tea, where everything's done proper.
I mean, the point of showing that is simply to sort of show, people think that the advertising is great, but the brand oozes through every pore of that execution, and it does so with a lightness of touch. So let's wrap up with some conclusions. Okay, the DNA of Breakthrough Brand Groove. What can we conclude? Difference is what makes the difference. It's the fast track to future sales, to profitable margin, and to stock performance. It's time to evolve the growth narrative and the growth model to incorporate price, because price inelasticity is the ultimate signal of brand strength, and right now that's more important than ever. Third, focus on mental and physical connectivity, not just availability. The financial value chain includes innovation, it includes experience, it includes having a responsible reputation. And these are the things which really underpin perceived value before, during, and after purchase, and some of that hasn't been focused on enough. Fourth, any brand can be a breakthrough brand. Your brands can be, or maybe they already are breakthrough brands, but it requires bold, imaginative leadership to infuse the entire organization. This is where marketing has its value outside of a marketing team, where it connects with CX, it connects with innovation, it connects with product proposition. Finally, there are a number of ways that we can help you right now if you want to be a breakthrough brand. We can help you by ensuring you've got really strong foundations in terms of your having a breakthrough brand strategy, because ultimately that's creating a really strong position that differentiates right through the organization, from your purpose to your CX, to your CSR, to your comms, is really the red thread that is so important. Secondly, we can help through creating high-impact briefs, platforms, and creative executions, and through developing breakthrough work by developing those better briefs, better platforms. And a lot of that, what we found is when you include early stage research, it doubles your likelihood to be top quartile effectiveness. And that's a stage that a lot of clients don't invest enough time in. So I would definitely urge you, that's a really, really easy win to immediately make your money work harder. But it involves, but reach out to us, we can help both in terms of qualitative and quantitative solutions there. Finally, shape the category or invent a new one. And this is about having breakthrough innovation by really making sure your innovation is meaningfully differentiated and it's not just me too. And that's both in terms of its products and services. Finally, if this tickles you, if you think more people need to hear this inside your organization, inside your teams, we're very happy to run breakthrough inspiration sessions by applying this kind of breakthrough thinking and the case studies I talked about to a particular brand challenge that you might be working on right now. And I'm very happy to do that. So come and hunt me down after this session. This is my email, dom.boyd@kantar.com, or just chat to me. But yeah, thank you very much indeed for listening. If you've got any questions, Andrew and I will be on stage. Happy to take them. Has anyone got any questions? Otherwise, we'll just stand here on the stage like lemons. It's her again. Who are you? Take the mic.
Yeah. So regarding everything you said about, the cost of living crisis, and I was just wondering if you have identified a category that is more or less susceptible to the lipstick effect or premiumization. Is that something that you have in your data?
I shall answer this. Is that the laws of what we've presented is true for all categories. There is a sort of an elasticity of categories. So it tends to be more luxury categories, for example, and high value categories like automotive tend to be most elastic in terms of creating pricing power factor. But I mean, the laws that we've talked through are applicable across all categories. But we can talk about that much more in a much more detailed way afterwards, if that's of interest to you, in terms of, obviously we can slice and dice this by category in a more granular way and look at the factors. But the overall learnings are true across categories, both in terms of the financial share modelling and in terms of the brand's importance of the factors such as difference. Hopefully that answers your question enough. Are there any other questions? Oh, you guys. Oh, there's one I can see right in the middle. This will be a tricky one to get to.
There's a mic here.
Come on, take the mic. You can do this.
Hey there, I'm James from MediaCom. Thanks for that, it's really interesting. The one thing I just wanted a bit more clarity on, I think when you were talking about things that declined in importance over time, you had communication there. So I was just wondering if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, sure. And again, decline doesn't mean it's not important. It's just, relative to other things. I think what we're picking up on there is the broader picture. I see it as different ways to kind of influence the consumer mindset around essentially willingness to pay a price premium, because that's really where the stock returns effect is coming from. And so I think what we're seeing there is probably a bit more of a stabilization of the role of communication in that, as opposed to it being actually less important. So yeah, I mean, it's more about, I think, getting the communication right, because also factored into this is whatever the communication is, that's what is getting picked up in the data. So It's not to say that great advertising, to use that dimension, is more or less important. I think getting the broader mix in terms of how media is allocated and spent is really, really critical there. And so maybe there's more work to be done to dig into that. And I think actually one of the sort of the things on our agenda is to go further into those declines, because I think the salience decline makes sense because it's sort of a weighting versus meaningful and different. I think there are some other little sort of more, I guess, tactical elements that we can look at as well. So I wouldn't say, definitely doesn't mean communication is significantly less important than it would otherwise be. It just means that I think it's worth rethinking the effectiveness of your communication relative to other strategic drivers of performance.
Just a bit on that, I think it's kind of an interesting complementary lens to look at, Peter Field's work around communications, some of the challenges we've seen over the last decade around their effectiveness, and the question it raises is: are they different enough? Are they creatively? Are they connecting in a way? Whether or not that's because of he attributes that to short-term digital focus. But it raises some other strategic questions about executionally. Are our executions less on point than they were? And certainly our analysis of Cannes winners would say that there are some big challenges there. And often brands are missing some of the fundamentals, in particular branding and in particular humour. Any other questions? Then we'll get off the stage. Thank you very much indeed.